What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to an episode of the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Nick Farabaugh here with you guys. Thursday before the first game of the Steelers season, we have football tonight, of course, the Cowboys and Eagles. So hope you guys are watching that. Tomorrow we are going to preview the Steelers' game against the New York Jets in full. So that'll be fun. We previewed it a little bit on Tuesday. If you want to see that, make sure to go watch it. But today I want to do kind of a season preview and kind of just go through this roster, this 53-man roster, and talk about strengths, weaknesses, what other things I see, and kind of how this thing plays out probably with the Steelers this year. Let's start with the offense. And this is, I think, probably the more up in the air side of the football for me when we kind of break it down. You look at what they have across their roster, and this is just where a lot of those ifs are, right? Um, when you have kind of if, this offense just has a lot of questions. But you look at someone like Troy Fautanu, for example, a young guy who is an if, but I'm very excited about him. I'm very excited to see kind of what he can do. The preseason tape is awesome for him. So really excited to see what he can do. But kind of overall as a cohesive unit, they're kind of a little bit still all over the place. I think it's reasonable to have a lot of questions about this unit. How good really is Aaron Rodgers? I think fair question to have when he's 41, going to be 42. I think all of that is a reasonable expectation to have and a reasonable question and skepticism to have when you approach this offense. I also think there's reasons to be excited about this offense, though. You think about Troy Fautanu. I'd be excited about him. You think about McCormick and you think about Frazier. I think the offensive line's a big reason, at least to have optimism or be excited to see what they maybe become. This is a really fun group up front. It's a lot of talent. There's a lot of investment. There's a lot of eye-popping plays on tape from all the guys on the offensive line. And the only guy that's not a young guy is Isaac Seumalo. Everybody else on this line has intriguing traits and has things that they have done well. Broderick Jones, probably the most tenuous of them all. But when you look at Broderick in the preseason, there's some promising tape on him. So just a lot of promise up front, I think, and probably the unit on this side of the football I'm most excited to see. I think the biggest question mark I have is wide receiver. Obviously, I think DK Metcalf is a fun player. Deep ball threat, can become a yak monster, just super strong blocker. There's a lot of good there with him. He is someone that if they lose him for any period of time, though, I think they're in trouble. You know, the wide receiver two options are guys like Scotty Miller, Calvin Austin III, Roman Wilson, you have Ben Skowronek there too. Again, just not a high level wide receiver room to me. I have questions about it, but we will see if anyone can emerge. They have 8 to 9 games to prove they can. The Steelers then could theoretically go back to the trade deadline waters yet again and try and get another wide receiver. But Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin III, Scotty Miller, throw Ben Skowronek in there if you want. All of those guys have an 8 to 9, maybe even 10 game audition to prove that they could be something and that they can be the solution and be the wide receiver two answer. On the other side of that, there's also these tight ends, which I think is undoubtedly there's probably the strongest room on this side of the football. It's hard not to be excited about kind of what you have in that tight end room. There's a lot of things that you can do matchup wise. You have a high level receiver, yak threat in Jonnu Smith. You have a really steady receiver and a guy that actually has improved as a blocker um, in Pat Frymuth. You have an absolute hoss of a blocker and somebody who I think can break out as a receiver um, in Darnell Washington, and then you have Connor Hayward in there as well, who's versatile. So there's just a lot of different things. You have to utilize them correctly as an OC, but a lot of talent there, a lot of things you can do. And then the running back room. I know a lot of people are concerned about this room. I actually like this room a lot. I've been excited about Jalen Warren. His contact balance, pass per receiving ability are pluses to me. I don't think he's going to be a 300 carry per year guy like Najee was, or Derrick Henry was under Arthur Smith, but I think he can still shoulder a featured role. Featured role does not have to be 80 to 90% of the snaps. It can be 65, 60%. And when you have guys like Caleb Johnson, Kenny Gainwell, I think that's fine. Kenny Gainwell, good split out of the backfield, good hands, shifty in between the tackles, hard to bring down in space. Caleb Johnson, a natural wide zone runner that when you give him a runway can absolutely break things for big plays. So I do think that this is a running back room that actually is probably going to outperform expectations. But we will see how this offense goes. They need to be average to slightly above average for this team to try and make a run in the postseason. I think there's ifs that have to be checked off the box there, but it's a talented group. This defense, I think you should be excited about in basically every single way. The only concern I have about this defense is secondary speed. I think you look specifically at the safety position. It's not a super fast group. The corners aren't blazing fast. But outside of that, it's hard to find a real hole on this roster. You look at the defensive line. I think it's reasonable to be excited about the trio of Derek Harmon, Keanu Benton, and Cam Hayward. I think that's going to be a really strong trio up front for you. What Y.A. Black showed in the preseason is a huge development for the Steelers. I mean, he was nothing short of awesome in the preseason. He's big. He's fixed his pad level issues that he had in college. He's utilizing his length perfectly, and he's utilizing his size and power at an extremely high level. So really easy to buy yourself into Y.A. Black and the hype there. You go to the second level, super deep inside linebacker room. This is a privilege the Steelers have in a lot of respects. Um, they do have a very deep inside linebacker room, and a lot of teams do not have that. Inside linebacker, while not being a premium position, as a lot of folks would call, things like edge and tackle and QB and wide receiver, does not have a ton of stars there. And they just don't have a lot of high level players there. And so it is easy to crack a roster, but it's not easy to have a deep room. The Steelers have four guys in this room, plus a young guy that they can try and develop in Carson Bruner. You look at Patrick Queen. He kind of started to hit the stride a little bit at the end of last year. I thought he got better as the season went on. Seems like he's more comfortable this year. Let's see in a more downhill attacking scheme, which I think they're going to change this year too. I think they're going to blitz more. I think they're going to disguise more. I think this scheme is not going to be nearly as vanilla as it was last year, which I'm looking forward to seeing. I think he will be more comfortable. Peyton Wilson, I think, is ready to take a leap. I thought his tape last year was good. I think his training camp has been solid. So I think he's ready to take a leap. Then you have Cole Holcomb, who had a great summer. Malik Harrison, good kind of hammer, downhill hammer. And then you have Carson Bruner as well. Corner. It's a little older, but still good room. Darius Slay can still play. Jalen Ramsey can still play. He's a good nickel at this point in his career. And Joey Porter Jr. is the guy that you hope becomes the cornerstone. Can he take a leap from quality starter to superstar this year? I think is the big question. Cleaning up those penalties and just getting overall consistency in his game will go a long way to doing that. But this is a really fun room, and they have depth. You think about guys like Brandon Eccles. You have to be excited about Brandon Eccles to me on this roster. Really, really good depth on the um, practice squad too. You've guys like Beanie Bishop and James Pierre there. Pierre, a good special teamer. And then when you get on the IR list, you have Corey Trice, who can also be a good player as long as he stays healthy. That's the big question with him. But this is a room that I think is reasonable to be excited about. Safety, I think you can reasonably have questions about. Deshaun Elliott, no questions about him. He is awesome. Juan Thornhill had a really good summer, really good preseason, but he has been hurt and had a bad year last year in Cleveland. Can he continue the strong momentum? And more importantly, if one of these guys gets hurt, who plays post safety? The backup free safety position, I think, is a concern. There's not a lot of athleticism in that room. You look at Chuck Clark, does not necessarily going to enthuse me as the backup post safety, but right now, I think they have a good trio there for in terms of what they can do as long as they're all healthy. It's if one of them goes down, then what happens? I think is a question. So like the concerns I have with this team are really, I'll say my kind of top five concerns I have: O-line depth, wide receiver room, um, coordinators. How are we going to do that? I didn't love what Terrell Austin and Arthur Smith did last year as overall job. Can we see them have better play there? Backup safety, I think, is another thing that I'm a little concerned by. And then overall, just is this team built to come down? If they lose, if they get out to slow starts, can they come back from them? Just not sure this offense is built to play from behind, but if they can stay ahead, if they can take care of the football, play good defense, win possession downs, things like that Mike Tomlin always talks about, this team can win a good deal of games. We think about breakout stars on this team. To me, there's three obvious ones that I'm going to pick. Troy Faltanu, who I've talked about at length. I think he is ready to ascend to another level. I think he is going to be a star and the breakout star of this offense this year. Um, Darnell Washington, I think, takes a leap this year. I think he finally gets involved in the passing game. Between the last 2 years, I think he has like 26 total career receptions or something like that. It's not much. Might even be less than that. I can't remember the specific number, but it's far less. It's not enough. This guy is a freak athlete, a tight end, and I think has the potential to be a breakout player. And the third one I'm going to say is going to be Peyton Wilson, who I think is going to really ascend up the ladder this year as a breakout player. There's a lot of strengths you can point to in this team. They're going to play good defense. They should be a good special teams unit. A lot of continuity on the special team side of things between same punter, same kicker, same long snapper. A lot of the regulars, Connor Hayward, Miles Killebrew, like the standouts, James Pierre-Ben Scorank, they're all there. And that was a good unit last year. So that special teams room should be pretty good again. And the real thing with this team is, can they get over the hump and get to a playoff win? If I were predicting right now what I think the season's going to end up doing, I would say something like 10-7 with a wild card loss. It's the same old story we've kind of seen with the Steelers. That's kind of where I feel this team is. It depends on their draw in the playoffs. If they get a team like Houston, or a weaker team that's not Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City, where I think are the clear three top teams in this conference, I think the Steelers are equipped to potentially win that. I think they're going to be. I think that's a better roster than they had at this point last year. I think the offense has a chance to be a little more consistent. I think they're still going to be a little up and down. But last year they were too inconsistent, and it was boom and then fell off a cliff. Can they just have more sustained peaks and valleys? That is actually much more consistent than it was last year, and that would be a much, much preferable version to what they had last year, all things considered. So that's just kind of my viewpoint of this team. A lot of things to hang your hat on, plenty of things to be concerned about as well. This team is certainly not what I would consider a top team in the AFC. It's not as constructed. I think it is a better team than they were last year. And I think that there's upside to this team that could be realized and lead them to that playoff win that they've been searching for over the last 8 to 9 years or so. So we'll see how this ends up going. But I do think this season is going to be a fascinating one, considering where they are and what seems like threads for future plans next offseason. All right, folks, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell for more. Thanks for watching.